Howard Hughes was once the very definition of the American dream. A brilliant aviator, a Hollywood filmmaker, and one of the wealthiest men in the world, he was admired as a daring innovator who pushed the boundaries of both sky and screen. In the 1930s and 1940s, Hughes was a legend, designing revolutionary aircraft, breaking world records, producing blockbuster films, and living a life surrounded by glamour, fame, and fortune. But behind the brilliance lay a darker story. Hughes was not only a genius, he was also a man haunted by obsessions, phobias, and an insatiable need for control. As his empire grew, so did his eccentricities. He became reclusive, retreating into darkened hotel rooms, surrounded by tissues and medicine bottles, terrified of germs, and mistrustful of everyone around him. The contrast was staggering. Hughes went from piloting experimental planes at record-breaking speeds to refusing to shake hands, from directing films that dazzled audiences to sitting alone in darkened rooms for months on end. His life became a paradox, the daring risk-taker who became a prisoner of his own mind. And yet, his story continues to fascinate. Hughes's innovations in aviation and cinema left a lasting impact, and his dramatic decline offers a haunting glimpse into the price of genius, ambition, and obsession. How did a man who once conquered the skies in Hollywood end up as one of history's most tragic recluses? What secrets can we learn from a billionaire who had everything and lost himself in the process? This is the story of Howard Hughes, the eccentric billionaire, the visionary pioneer, and the man whose life ended in isolation and obsession.
Howard Robert Hughes Jr. was born on December 24, 1905, in Houston, Texas, into privilege and wealth. His father, Howard Hughes Sr., was an inventive entrepreneur who patented a revolutionary drill bit that transformed the oil industry, and his mother, Aline, was a fiercely protective woman who watched over her son with obsessive care. From the moment Howard entered the world, he was groomed to be exceptional, but also burdened by expectations and anxieties that would shadow him for life. Howard Sr. was a towering figure in young Howard's life. He instilled in his son a respect for innovation and invention, teaching him that true success came from daring ideas and relentless pursuit. The Hughes Tool Company, built on his patented drill bit, made the family enormously wealthy, and Howard Jr. grew up with resources that few children could imagine. Yet money did not shield him from loneliness. His mother, often anxious about disease and health, imposed strict rules, bathing him in constant warnings about germs and illness. This early conditioning planted seeds of fear and obsession that would grow into the phobias that later consumed him. From an early age, Hughes displayed a fascination with mechanics. At the age of 11, he built Houston's first motorized bicycle, attaching a motor to a two-wheeler. At 12, he constructed a working radio transmitter, impressing local engineers with his ingenuity. By 14, he was already tinkering with airplanes, dreaming of one day flying them himself. These early experiments foreshadowed the restless brilliance that would drive his adult life. Academically, Hughes was gifted but restless. He attended elite schools but often seemed bored with conventional studies. He was far more interested in building machines than reading textbooks. Teachers noted his sharp intellect, but also his stubborn independence. He wanted to learn on his own terms. By his teenage years, Hughes was already showing the duality that would define him, a mind full of creativity and a temperament unwilling to be restrained. His adolescence was marked by tragedy. In 1922, when Hughes was just 16, his mother died suddenly. 2 years later, his father passed away as well. In the span of less than 3 years, Howard lost both parents. Though he inherited the family fortune and the Hughes Tool Company, the losses left him profoundly isolated. He was a teenager with immense wealth but no guiding hand, forced to navigate adulthood without the emotional anchor of family. At 19, Hughes dropped out of Rice University, determined to take control of his inheritance and chart his own path. Most young men would have been overwhelmed by such responsibility, but Hughes saw it as an opportunity. He declared his ambition to make his name in two fields, aviation and motion pictures. To him, both represented freedom, innovation, and the chance to leave a legacy larger than life. Even in his youth, Hughes's contradictions were clear. He was charming yet withdrawn, ambitious yet insecure, disciplined in some areas yet reckless in others. Friends recalled a boy who could be dazzlingly creative one moment and deeply anxious the next. The seeds of both genius and madness were already visible. Howard Hughes's childhood was not one of struggle in the traditional sense. He was born into wealth and privilege, yet it was marked by profound loneliness, loss, and the burdens of expectation. The boy who built machines in his garage and dreamed of the skies would grow into a man who conquered them. But the same boy raised in fear of germs and loss would also grow into a recluse, imprisoned by his obsessions. The foundation of Howard Hughes's extraordinary life was set in those early years. Brilliance born from curiosity, ambition fueled by tragedy, and fears planted by a mother's anxieties. It was a childhood that created not just an innovator, but a haunted man.
When Howard Hughes inherited his family's fortune as a teenager, he made a declaration that startled those around him. He would build the world's greatest aviation company and become a Hollywood legend. It sounded like youthful arrogance, but Hughes meant every word. Armed with immense wealth, relentless ambition, and a restless mind, he began carving a path that would make him one of the most talked-about figures of the 20th century. Hollywood maverick. In the mid-1920s, Hughes moved to Los Angeles and dove headfirst into the film industry. At a time when Hollywood was transitioning from silent films to talkies, he sensed opportunity. His first projects were modest, but by 1930, he shocked the industry with Hell's Angels, an aviation epic unlike anything ever attempted. Hughes poured an unprecedented $4 million into the film, a staggering sum at the time, and spent years perfecting it. He even reshot much of the film when sound technology advanced, refusing to release a silent picture. To make the dogfight scenes authentic, Hughes bought real aircraft and hired dozens of pilots. He often flew alongside them, pushing the planes to dangerous limits. The production was deadly. Several pilots were killed, and Hughes himself narrowly escaped a crash. But the result was breathtaking. Hell's Angels became a box office sensation, solidifying Hughes as a visionary filmmaker who valued spectacle and authenticity above all. His next success came with Scarface, 1932, a gritty gangster film directed by Howard Hawks. Controversial for its violence, it was censored in several states, but critics praised its boldness. Hughes reveled in the notoriety. Controversy only made his films more popular. Later, he produced The Outlaw, 1943, infamous for its scandalous marketing campaign focusing on actress Jane Russell's cleavage. Once again, Hughes proved he understood not just filmmaking, but the art of spectacle and publicity. By the mid-1930s, Hughes had earned a reputation as one of Hollywood's most daring producers. He wasn't just a rich man playing with movies. He was reshaping the industry, pushing boundaries in storytelling, technology, and marketing. Master of the skies. While conquering Hollywood, Hughes was simultaneously pursuing his true passion, aviation. In 1932, he founded Hughes Aircraft Company, which began as a small division, but quickly became a hub for innovation. Obsessed with speed and performance, Hughes personally designed and flew experimental aircraft. In 1935, he piloted the H-1 Racer, a sleek silver monoplane of his own design, and set a world speed record of 352 miles per hour. The plane was revolutionary, influencing future aircraft design, including World War II fighters.
Hughes wasn't just a businessman writing checks. He was in the cockpit risking his life to prove his machines. He continued chasing records. In 1938, Hughes circumnavigated the globe in just 91 hours, smashing the previous record and capturing worldwide attention. He became a national hero, celebrated with a ticker tape parade in New York City. Newspapers hailed him as the embodiment of American daring and innovation. During World War II, Hughes aircraft expanded, producing military planes and pioneering radar technology. Though often criticized for delays and overambitious projects, like the massive H-4 Hercules flying boat, nicknamed the Spruce Goose, Hughes pushed the boundaries of engineering. The Spruce Goose flew only once, in 1947, but it symbolized his relentless ambition to dream bigger than anyone else. Building an empire. Hughes's ventures extended beyond Hollywood and aviation. In 1939, he bought a controlling interest in Trans World Airlines, TWA, transforming it into a major international carrier. His vision was to make flying glamorous, safe, and accessible to more people. Under his leadership, TWA introduced innovations like in-flight entertainment and luxurious cabin service, shaping the golden age of air travel. At the same time, Hughes was becoming a household name, not just for his achievements, but for his lifestyle. He dated some of Hollywood's most famous actresses, including Katharine Hepburn, Ava Gardner, and Lana Turner. Paparazzi followed his every move, fascinated by the billionaire playboy who straddled the worlds of aviation, cinema, and celebrity. The perfectionist's burden. But beneath the glamour, Hughes's perfectionism was already showing signs of obsession. On film sets, he demanded endless retakes, spending millions to capture a single shot. In aviation, he pushed planes, and himself, beyond safe limits. In 1946, while testing an experimental reconnaissance plane in Beverly Hills, Hughes crashed into a Beverly Hills neighborhood, nearly killing himself. He suffered severe injuries, including broken bones and burns, and lived with chronic pain for the rest of his life. The crash marked a turning point. Though he recovered physically, it deepened his dependence on painkillers and magnified his need for control. Still, he refused to slow down. Hughes poured himself into projects, determined to leave a legacy as one of the greatest innovators of his age. The rise completed. By the late 1940s, Howard Hughes had achieved what few could imagine. He was a celebrated Hollywood filmmaker, a record-breaking aviator, the owner of a major airline, and the head of a growing aerospace company. He was admired as a genius, envied as a playboy, and feared as a competitor. He had conquered the skies and dazzled the silver screen. His empire stretched from Hollywood to hangars, from boardrooms to bedrooms. Hughes had become not just a businessman, but a legend, a symbol of ambition without limits. But with greatness came shadows. His perfectionism edged closer to obsession. His injuries fueled dependence on drugs. His eccentricities grew sharper. And soon, the very qualities that had propelled him to the top would begin pulling him into darkness.
For decades, Howard Hughes was celebrated as a genius innovator, a record-breaking aviator, and a Hollywood mogul. But behind the glamour of premieres and the applause of ticker tape parades, darkness was spreading. The man who once conquered the skies slowly became a prisoner of his own mind. The turning point came after Hughes's 1946 plane crash in Beverly Hills. He survived, but barely. His body was shattered, his ribs broken, his chest crushed, his skull fractured. The pain was excruciating, and to endure it, he turned to morphine and codeine. These painkillers brought relief, but also dependency. They dulled not only his pain, but his once razor-sharp focus, leaving him more vulnerable to paranoia and obsession. Hughes's lifelong fear of germs, planted by his mother in childhood, now grew into a consuming phobia. He began washing his hands compulsively, avoiding human contact and demanding sterile environments.
associates described bizarre rituals. Hughes insisted that staff use tissues to touch objects, sealed instructions in envelopes to avoid contamination, and repeated hand washing until his skin cracked. What had once been a quirk became a crippling obsession. His personal relationships also began to fracture. While he had once been the charming playboy of Hollywood, his romances with stars like Katharine Hepburn and Ava Gardner deteriorated under the weight of his controlling nature and reclusiveness. He withdrew from society, preferring isolation in darkened hotel suites where curtains were drawn, the air filtered, and access strictly controlled. For months, sometimes years, he refused to be seen in public. Business, too, began to suffer. While Hughes' aircraft thrived in some respects, his increasingly erratic behavior alienated executives and partners. At TWA, boardroom battles escalated as his absentee leadership frustrated colleagues. He was often unreachable, holed up in a hotel room, communicating through memos that grew stranger and more obsessive. His perfectionism, once a strength, now paralyzed decision-making. The most infamous episodes of Hughes's decline came during the 1950s and 1960s, when he effectively imprisoned himself in luxury hotels. At the Desert Inn to Las Vegas, he occupied entire floors, covering windows with blackout curtains and demanding round-the-clock service. He sat naked in dark rooms surrounded by Kleenex boxes and bottles of milk, obsessively watching movies. Employees described a man consumed by fear of germs, of betrayal, of the outside world. Despite his decline, Hughes's fortune allowed him to maintain control. He bought casinos, hotels, and vast tracts of land in Las Vegas, reshaping the city's future while rarely leaving his suite. His purchases baffled the public, a recluse controlling billions, steering industries from behind drawn curtains. The once daring aviator now refused to fly. The record-breaking risk-taker who had circled the globe was grounded by his own mind. The contrast was heartbreaking. The fearless innovator turned into a shadow of himself, imprisoned by paranoia. By the 1970s, Hughes was a ghost. His hair and nails grew long, his body frail from malnutrition and drug use. Associates and aides controlled his access to the world, shielding him from scrutiny while profiting from his vulnerability. Rumors swirled. Was Hughes even alive? Newspapers speculated wildly as sightings became rare. The dark side of Hughes's decline was not a scandal in the traditional sense of fraud or corruption. It was the tragedy of a brilliant mind consumed by mental illness and addiction. He had everything: wealth, fame, genius, and yet he ended up with nothing but fear, isolation, and decline.
By the 1960s, Howard Hughes had become both one of the richest and most mysterious men in the world. His fortune, estimated at billions in today's dollars, spanned multiple industries: aviation, film, real estate, casinos, and oil tools. He controlled Hughes aircraft, had once dominated TWA, and now, through a series of acquisitions, he was quietly reshaping Las Vegas into his own empire. On paper, Hughes was at the pinnacle of power. In reality, he was a prisoner of his own mind. Hughes's move into Las Vegas was the most visible symbol of his peak. In 1966, he arrived at the Desert Inn Hotel and refused to leave. When the hotel's management tried to evict him, Hughes simply bought the entire property. It was the beginning of a spree. He went on to purchase multiple casinos, hotels, and parcels of land, spending hundreds of millions and becoming the largest private employer in Nevada. His investments helped clean up Las Vegas's reputation, pushing out organized crime and attracting more legitimate business. For a time, Hughes was seen as the unlikely savior of the city. But the man behind these massive deals rarely stepped outside. Hughes conducted business from the top floors of hotels, surrounded by aides who delivered his commands in memos. Curtains remained shut, the air was carefully filtered, and contact with the outside world was minimized. Employees and associates often went months without seeing him in person. His power grew, but his world shrank. Financially, Hughes was untouchable.
he wielded influence not only in Las Vegas, but also in Washington. His company, Hughes Aircraft, was one of the largest defense contractors in America, pioneering technologies that would shape the Cold War. He had friends in politics, control over industries, and the wealth to buy almost anything he desired. Yet, for all his reach, Hughes's personal life was defined by isolation, addiction, and fear. The contradiction was stark. Hughes controlled billions, but he was afraid to touch a doorknob without a tissue. He could dictate the future of Las Vegas, but he could not conquer his fear of germs. He was celebrated as one of America's great innovators, yet he spent his days sitting in darkened rooms, endlessly rewatching movies, injecting himself with codeine, and issuing erratic orders. The climax of Hughes's life was not a single moment, but a paradox. At the very height of his wealth and influence, he was at the lowest point of his humanity. His empire stretched from Hollywood to Las Vegas to the skies, but his own world was reduced to a hotel suite. In 1969, he made headlines again by selling his controlling interest in TWA for a massive profit, further cementing his status as one of the richest men alive. But even this triumph was overshadowed by his eccentricity. Rumors swirled about his appearance: unkempt hair, long fingernails, and a frail body hidden from public view. Some even doubted whether he was still alive. Howard Hughes's climax was the ultimate irony. He had achieved everything he once dreamed of: wealth, fame, power, and control over industries that defined modern America. Yet he was trapped in a gilded cage of his own making, a recluse at the height of empire. The daring aviator who once touched the skies had grounded himself, not by external enemies, but by the obsessions within his own mind. It was a rise so brilliant and a fall so tragic that Hughes became both a symbol of American ambition and its most haunting cautionary tale.
Howard Hughes's legacy is one of brilliance and tragedy, a paradox that continues to fascinate decades after his death. He was both a symbol of boundless American ambition and a cautionary tale of obsession, consuming genius. His name has become shorthand for the eccentric billionaire, an icon whose life story blurs the line between innovation and madness. On the positive side, Hughes left an indelible mark on aviation. His H-1 Racer set speed records and influenced fighter plane design. His daring flights, including the record-breaking circumnavigation of the globe, made him a national hero and inspired generations of pilots and engineers. Hughes Aircraft Company grew into one of the most important defense contractors in the United States, pioneering radar, missile systems, and satellites. Even after his withdrawal from public life, the company contributed heavily to technological advances that shaped the Cold War and the space race. In Hollywood, Hughes was a pioneer of spectacle. Hell's Angels set new standards for aerial cinematography. Scarface pushed the boundaries of violence and storytelling, paving the way for future gangster films. His instinct for controversy with The Outlaw showed a genius for publicity, blending art and marketing in ways that foreshadowed today's media-driven culture. Through his business ventures, Hughes shaped entire industries. At Transworld Airlines, TWA, he introduced innovations that elevated air travel into a glamorous experience. In Las Vegas, his investments helped transform the city from a mob-dominated town into a mainstream tourist destination, laying the groundwork for its rise as an entertainment capital. Yet, Hughes's legacy is also inseparable from his decline. His obsessive-compulsive disorder, drug dependency, and self-imposed isolation turned him into a recluse, living in darkness while his empire operated in his name. At the time of his death in 1976, Hughes was barely recognizable, frail, malnourished, with hair and nails grown long, weighing just 90 pounds. His estate, worth billions, was contested for years in court as no clear will was found. the contradictions define him. A fearless aviator who became terrified of germs. A visionary entrepreneur who could not manage his own life. A public hero who became a phantom, hidden from sight. Hughes' story continues to resonate because it speaks to universal themes: the price of ambition, the fragility of genius, and the dangers of unchecked obsession. In many ways, he embodied the extreme edges of the American dream, proof that one person could rise to unimaginable heights, but also a reminder that success without balance can lead to self-destruction. His life has inspired countless books, documentaries, and films, most famously, Martin Scorsese's The Aviator, 2004, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, which reintroduced Hughes to a new generation as both a visionary and a tragic figure. The lessons of Howard Hughes' legacy are stark but powerful. Innovation requires courage. Hughes' risks in aviation and film pushed industries forward. Brand and spectacle matter. Long before modern marketing, Hughes understood the power of controversy and image. Money cannot buy peace. For all his billions, Hughes' final years were defined not by luxury, but by fear and loneliness. Mental health is as vital as ambition. His decline highlights the cost of ignoring the human side of genius. Ultimately, Howard Hughes' legacy is a dual one. He will forever be remembered as a man who reached for the skies, and as a man who fell victim to the weight of his own mind. His life is both inspiration and warning, reminding us that true greatness lies not only in what we achieve, but in how we live.
The story of Howard Hughes is a reminder that genius and obsession often walk a razor's edge. He was a man who soared higher than almost anyone of his era, breaking aviation records, transforming Hollywood, and building industries, yet ended his life isolated, haunted, and consumed by fear. His journey is both a celebration of bold ambition and a warning about what happens when control turns into obsession. But within his rise and fall lie lessons for us all: the courage to dream big, the importance of balance, and the truth that success means little without peace of mind. Hughes' life compels us to ask, what does it really mean to live well, and what are we willing to sacrifice for greatness? If this story has made you reflect on ambition, innovation, and the human cost of obsession, there is much more to discover. Subscribe to Billionaire Secrets and join us as we explore the untold journeys of the world's most fascinating billionaires, their triumphs, their failures, and the lessons they leave behind. And share your thoughts in the comments. Do you see Hughes more as a visionary hero or a tragic, cautionary tale? Your perspective could spark a conversation that inspires others.